Is the coronavirus vaccine the mark of the beast? I've been hearing people speculate about that over the past few weeks, and then this week I had somebody ask me to address it in this week's blog. Before answering that question, you have to ask another question first, which is, what is the mark of the beast? Well, in Revelation 13, it talks about people being marked on either the hand or the forehead with this mark of the beast. And if they don't have the mark of the beast, then they can't buy or sell things. In other words, they can't engage in commerce, which makes it really hard to live. You're basically ostracized from society, and at the same time, some of your basic needs, you're going to have challenges trying to get some of your basic needs met, like buying food, being able to eat. So not having the mark of the beast could be completely debilitating, even potentially life-threatening. Some people have found some eerie parallels between that and some of the things that have been talked about with the vaccine, that if you don't have the vaccine, you can't participate in certain venues, you won't be able to go to certain places, there'll be restrictions on your movement and so forth. So that's where this question comes from. But what Revelation tells us about the mark of the beast is that it's the mark of a name or the number of a name. Revelation tells us we can calculate who that person is. It gives us the number. The number is 666. I know in the popular imagination, when people hear 666, they think the devil. But that's not actually who Revelation is talking about. It's talking about a specific person. This is kind of weird for us, but in ancient languages, including the Greek that Revelation is written in, including the Hebrew that the Old Testament is written in ancient languages, there were numerical values assigned to the letters, kind of like Roman numerals. So the Roman numeral X represents the number 10. So in ancient alphabets, like the Greek alphabet, the letters in the alphabet corresponded also to numbers. So with a little bit of work, you can figure out who 666 represents. As I learned a long time ago, if you take the numbers in Greek that represent 200, that correspond to 200, then 60, 200, 6, and 200, which adds up to 666, it spells out Nero in the Greek. So 666, the mark of the beast, is representative of Nero. What many scholars say is that the mark of the beast was actually his image or his insignia or his name on the coinage, the currency that was used at the time. That was the mark of the beast. It wasn't a literal marking on people's bodies. It was actually the currency that they were using at the time. And of course, if you didn't use that currency, you couldn't engage in commerce. You would be ostracized from society. That's the historical context of the mark of the beast. That's what it meant to the writer of Revelation, what he was signaling to those early Christians. They all knew that this meant Nero, 666, the mark of the beast was Nero, who was not a really good guy. In fact, one of the stories about Nero is in persecuting Christians, he would take Christians and tie them to a stake in his garden, and at night he would actually light them on fire so that he could take strolls through his garden while they basically burned to death at the stake in his backyard, in his garden. So not a nice guy. And that's where Nero became associated with the Antichrist and like somebody like Adolf Hitler, the incarnation of evil. That's where we get the idea that 666 represents the devil. But historically, it represented Nero. Revelation, to be sure, operates on two levels. It operates on that historical level where everybody reading the book at the time knew the code, knew what it was talking about, the figures that it was talking about around their time. But it also operates prophetically. It's also meant to tell us what will happen at the end time, to signal some of the events, some of the things that will happen before Jesus and when Jesus comes again. So is there some way in which prophetically this mark of the beast could be the coronavirus vaccine? Well, the honest answer, the only answer I have is, I have no idea. I honestly don't think it is. I think it's highly unlikely that it is, but it could be. But that's not really what Revelation is trying to tell us. It's not trying to give us the signs of the times. In fact, Jesus even warns against this. In Mark chapter 13:32, Jesus says about the end of the world, he says, nobody knows the day or the hour, not even the Son. So Jesus, when he was walking the face of the earth, when he was come among us as a fully human being, even he didn't know the exact date of the end time. So who are we as human beings to think that we can figure it out? It's very dangerous to try to speculate about the end, when it's going to happen, including things like, is this the mark of the beast? I totally understand the impulse to do this. We have felt so much fear. We felt so out of control over this past year. We want to regain some of that sense of control. We want to be able to read the signs of the times, especially the signs of the end times, and be prepared for that. We want to find some kind of deeper meaning in everything. And on top of that, our government hasn't been all that forthcoming with us throughout the crisis, the coronavirus pandemic. Right from the beginning, when they told us we had nothing to worry about, then told us nobody needed to wear a mask, and then changed and said everybody has to wear a mask, until right now, where even with the vaccine, in the recent developments over the past week or so, they have pulled the Johnson & Johnson vaccine after telling people that it was fine. And they pulled it now, saying that there's only like 1 in a million chance of having any severe consequences. And that's probably true, but it's hard to have trust in a government that keeps doing that. Whether that's because the science is just taking time to catch up with reality, with what's going on, whether it's because people are playing politics with it all, or whether there's more sinister motives, it's easy not to trust them and to start wondering about things like whether the vaccine could be something as sinister as the mark of the beast. But even though that's an understandable impulse, Jesus himself tells us not to speculate. It's not necessary, and it can be very dangerous. It can end up making Christians look foolish and gullible and undermine our witness. I remember the first Gulf War, when many Christians were sure that this was Armageddon. They were talking about how Saddam Hussein was the Antichrist. Well, obviously, looking back, that was totally wrong, and it makes those Christians look foolish. It does undermine their witness. So we shouldn't speculate about whether or not the vaccine is the mark of the beast or not, because ultimately it doesn't really matter. And that's the point that Revelation is trying to make. See, the book of Revelation is written to these Christians who are being viciously persecuted in the first century. And it's telling them to hang on, to hang in there, to cling to their faith, because, and this is the point, this is everything Revelation wants to tell them and us. This is the ultimate point, because in the end, no matter what happens, no matter whether this is the mark of the beast or not, no matter what happens, Jesus wins. See, that's why we don't have to worry about reading the signs or the times, because if we put our trust in him, we're prepared for whatever happens. Jesus wins. That's why we don't have to be filled with anxiety, even though we are out of control, even though we do feel a lot of fear, feel like we have no control over this whole situation this past year. The truth is that no matter what happens to us, Jesus wins. We have no need to be distressed, whether it's the first century Christians under Roman persecution or whether it's us with COVID. We know that Jesus wins. On a global scale, it seems like there's just one thing after another. I mean, think about the past 20 years. From Y2K, we went from Y2K to 9/11 to a global financial crisis to now COVID, with a lot of other things in between. Personally, life feels like it's just one thing after another, like we never catch a break, whether it's a health scare or a financial crisis or a relationship falling apart. It just seems like life keeps throwing things at us and we can never catch a break. We can never rest and be at peace. There's a reason for that. It's because we're not home yet. We are sojourners, strangers in a foreign land. Our home is with Jesus. And what Revelation tells us, what all of Scripture tells us, is that in the end, Jesus wins. So whether or not the coronavirus vaccine is the mark of the beast or not, we have nothing, absolutely nothing to fear, because we know Jesus wins. And that's all we need to know. So what do you think about the coronavirus vaccine being the mark of the beast? What are your thoughts about that? I'd love to hear your comments. You can go to the Contact EJ page of the Raising Jesus website and leave them there. I look forward to hearing from you. Also, if you haven't had a chance to yet, please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.